Did you know that in the 14th century, the average life expectancy was around 35 years? But that number is a lie. It's a statistical ghost created by the tragic reality of infant mortality. If you were a medieval peasant and you survived childhood, if you made it to your 21st birthday, you had a decent chance of seeing 50 or even 60. Some people, like the Venetian Doge Enrico Dandolo, lived well into their 90s, even leading a crusade in his old age. They weren't all dying young. They were living. And as they lived, they got older. They got wrinkles. Their backs ached. They watched their children grow up and have children of their own. So what did they know that we don't? We live in an age of biohacking, anti-aging creams, and the desperate pursuit of eternal youth. We see getting older as a disease to be cured, but they saw it as a natural, inevitable part of life, a part with its own purpose, its own wisdom. They didn't have our science, our medicine, our endless stream of information. But maybe, just maybe, they had something more important. They had a framework for living and for aging that we have almost completely forgotten. What if their simple, hard-won wisdom is more valuable than any supplement or life extension technology we could ever invent? What if the secrets to a good old age aren't found in a lab, but in the echoes of a forgotten world? Verse number 25. Do we need a North Star to navigate the years? People in the Middle Ages had faith. For most, it was the Christian faith, a story that gave shape and meaning to everything. Birth, death, suffering, joy. It was all part of a larger plan. Your life wasn't just a random series of events. It was a pilgrimage. You were going somewhere. This gave them a powerful psychological anchor. When things got tough, and things were almost always tough, there was a reason. There was a higher purpose. Getting older wasn't just a process of decay. It was a process of getting closer to the final destination, to God. It was a spiritual journey. We don't live in that world anymore. For many of us, the old stories have lost their power. But the need for a North Star, for a guiding purpose, hasn't gone away. It's a fundamental human need. The psychologist Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the Holocaust, wrote about this in his book Man's Search for Meaning. He observed that the prisoners who survived were often not the strongest physically, but those who had a reason to live, a person to see again, a book to write, a meaning to fulfill. Without that, the will to live simply evaporated. He developed a whole school of therapy around this idea called logotherapy. The central idea is that the primary human drive is not pleasure, but the pursuit and discovery of what we find meaningful. And modern research backs this up. A 2019 study published in JAMA Network Open looked at nearly 7,000 adults over the age of 50. It found that those who had a strong sense of purpose in life were less likely to die over a 4-year period than those who didn't. They lived longer. The effect was strong even after accounting for things like depression or overall health. A sense of purpose seems to act as a kind of buffer against the stresses of aging. It gives you a reason to get out of bed in the morning. It helps you weather the storms of illness and loss. It turns the process of aging from a passive decline into an active journey. The medieval peasant had their purpose handed to them by their culture. We have a harder job. We have to find our own. But the principle is the same. Whether it's raising a family, mastering a craft, fighting for a cause, or creating art, having something larger than yourself to serve is not a luxury. It's a biological necessity. It's what keeps the fire lit as the years pile on. It's the compass that helps you navigate the confusing, often frightening landscape of later life. Without it, we are truly lost. But what if a purpose isn't found, but built day by day through small actions? If meaning is a biological need, why is it so hard for so many to find? And could a society that prioritizes individual happiness over collective purpose be setting us up for a crisis of meaning in old age? Number 24. What does a vast universe teach us about our small lives? Imagine being a medieval shepherd. You're out in the field on a clear night. There are no city lights, no smog, just an ocean of stars, so bright and clear it feels like you could reach out and touch them. The Milky Way isn't a faint smudge, it's a brilliant, shimmering river of light. You see the constellations move across the sky, marking the passage of the seasons. This was a nightly reality for almost everyone in the Middle Ages. They had a direct, unfiltered connection to the cosmos. Their lives were small and often brutal, but they were lived under a sky that was immense and full of wonder. This experience, this feeling of being a small part of something vast and incomprehensible, is what we now call, researchers Dr. Keltner and Jonathan Haidt at the University of California, Berkeley, define awe as the feeling we get in the presence of something vast that challenges our understanding of the world. Looking at the stars is a classic trigger for awe, and it turns out this feeling is incredibly good for us. That studies have shown that experiencing awe can make us feel more connected to others, more humble, more generous, and less focused on our own petty problems. A 2015 study published in the journal Emotion found that participants who reported experiencing more awe also had lower levels of pro-inflammatory cytokines, which are proteins associated with chronic diseases like heart disease and depression. Awe seems to be good for our physical health. As we get older, our world can sometimes shrink. We might retire from work, our children may move away, our physical abilities might decline. It's easy to get bogged down in doctor's appointments, aches and pains, and worries about the future. The daily, personal scale of life can become overwhelming. This is where the medieval wisdom of looking up at the stars comes in. It's an antidote to self-absorption. It's a perspective shift, contemplating the vastness of the universe, the billions of years that have passed, the sheer scale of it all, puts our own lives into a different context. Our anxieties and our egos shrink. We are reminded that we are part of a much, much larger story. Carl Sagan famously talked about this in his book Pale Blue Dot, reflecting on a photo of Earth taken from billions of miles away. He called our planet a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. This perspective doesn't make our lives meaningless. On the contrary, it makes them more precious. It fosters a sense of humility and interconnectedness. It's a spiritual experience, whether you're religious or not. The medieval shepherd had it every night. We have to seek it out. But turning off the TV, going outside on a clear night, and just looking up might be one of the most powerful things we can do for our well-being as we age. If the feeling of awe is so beneficial, why have we designed a world that systematically eliminates it with light pollution and constant distraction? Could a lack of awe be a contributing factor to the narcissism and anxiety of modern culture? What would happen if we prescribed awe therapy, scheduled time to look at the stars or a Grand Canyon for the elderly? Number 23 is walking the simplest path to a clearer mind. In the medieval worlds, you walked. You walked everywhere. There were horses and carts, but for the vast majority of people, your own 2 feet were your primary mode of transportation. You walked to the fields, you walked to the market, you walked to church, you walked on pilgrimages that could last for months, like the famous Camino de Santiago in Spain. Walking wasn't exercise, it was just life. It was so deeply integrated into their existence that they probably never thought about it. But in doing so, they were reaping a host of benefits that we are only now beginning to fully appreciate. We tend to think of the mind and body as separate things. The mind is for thinking, the body is for moving. But this is a modern invention. The medieval person understood on an intuitive level that they were connected. The philosophers and monks knew that a long walk could untangle a thorny intellectual or spiritual problem. The very rhythm of walking, the steady beat of footfalls, seems to do something to the brain. It quiets the noise and allows for clearer, more creative thought. The 19th century philosopher Soren Kierkegaard knew this. He said, "I have walked myself into my best thoughts." Modern neuroscience is starting to show why this is true. A 2014 study from Stanford University found that walking boosts creative output by an average of 60%. The act of walking, not just being outdoors, was the key factor. It seems to open up the free flow of ideas. It engages what's known as the brain's default mode network, which is active when we're not focused on a specific task. This is the network associated with daydreaming, memory, and thinking about the future. Walking gives it the space to work. It's also been shown to increase the size of the hippocampus, the part of the brain involved in memory and learning, which tends to shrink in late adulthood. A study from the University of Pittsburgh showed that brisk walking for 40 minutes, 3 times a week, could increase hippocampal volume by 2%, effectively reversing age-related loss by 1 to 2 years. As we get older, staying physically active is crucial, but walking is more than just good for the heart and lungs. It's good for the soul. It connects us to the world around us. It slows us down to a human pace. In a world of cars and screens, a simple walk is a radical act. It's a way to reconnect the mind and the body. It's a moving meditation. The medieval peasant didn't have a choice, but we do. And choosing to walk more, whether it's around the block or on a long hiking trail, might be the simplest, cheapest, and most effective piece of wisdom we can borrow from them for a healthier, saner old age. We know walking is good for us, but why do we still build cities that are so hostile to pedestrians? If the link between walking and creativity is so strong, why do we force ourselves to solve our biggest problems while sitting still in sterile offices? Could the decline in casual, everyday walking be a hidden factor in the rise of both dementia and mental health disorders? Number 22. Why did we become a disposable society? A medieval peasant didn't own much. A wooden spoon, a clay pot, a wool tunic, a simple stool. But the things they did own, they cared for. If the pot cracked, you tried to mend it. If the tunic tore, you patched it. If the stool leg broke, you fixed it. Things were made by hand, often by someone you knew. They were made to last. The idea of throwing something away because it was a little bit broken or because a new style came out would have been completely alien. Mending wasn't a hobby. It was a basic life skill, a necessity. It was an expression of stewardship, of respecting the materials and the labor that went into an object. This mindset of mending and repair is a powerful metaphor for how we approach aging. We live in a disposable culture. We buy cheap clothes, cheap electronics, cheap furniture. When they break, we throw them away and buy new ones. And we've started to apply this same logic to our own bodies and our own lives. We see the signs of aging, wrinkles, gray hair, a slower pace as defects. We want to replace them, fix them, or throw a blanket over them. We talk about anti-aging as if aging itself is the enemy. We value the new, the young, the pristine. We have lost the appreciation for the beauty of something that has been well used, well loved, and well mended. The Japanese have a concept called kintsugi. It's the art of repairing broken pottery with lacquer mixed with powdered gold, silver, or platinum. The idea is that the piece is more beautiful for having been broken. The repair is not hidden, it's highlighted. The cracks become part of the object's history, a testament to its resilience. This is a profound way to think about getting older. The scars, the wrinkles, the experiences that have broken us and been mended they are not signs of decay. They are marks of a life lived. They are the golden seams that tell our story. There's a psychological benefit to this too. The act of mending something with your own hands is deeply satisfying. It's a small act of defiance against a culture of waste. It connects us to the physical world. It teaches patience and problem solving. A 2013 study by a group of psychologists in the UK highlighted the therapeutic benefits of craft activities, including mending. They found that engaging in these activities can reduce anxiety, improve mood, and increase self-esteem. It gives us a sense of agency and competence. Instead of being passive consumers, we become active creators and caretakers. Applying that same mindset to our own aging process, caring for our bodies, respecting their history, and valuing the wisdom that comes from a life of wear and tear is a powerful shift. Why did the value of durability and repair disappear so quickly from our culture? If we find so much satisfaction in mending objects, could we find similar satisfaction in mending our communities and relationships instead of discarding them? What would our society look like if we treated our elders with the same reverence as a kintsugi bowl, valuing the beauty of their repaired cracks? Number 21. What is the true cost of holding a grudge? Life in the Middle Ages was close-knit and inescapable. You lived in a small village or a crowded town. You saw the same people every single day. The person you had a dispute with over a piece of land was the same person you sat next to in church, the same person whose children played with your children. In that kind of environment, holding on to a grudge was not just a personal burden, it was a social poison. It could disrupt the delicate fabric of the community that everyone depended on for survival. Forgiveness wasn't just a lofty religious ideal preached from the pulpit, it was a practical necessity. The Lord's Prayer, recited daily by millions, wasn't abstract, "Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us." It was a social contract. We live in a much more fragmented world. We can move to a new city, change jobs, block someone on social media. It's easier than ever to cut people out of our lives, but the wisdom of forgiveness is more important than ever, especially as we get older. Holding on to anger, resentment, and bitterness is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. The person who suffers most is the one holding the grudge. Modern science has shown this in stark detail. Dr. Everett Worthington at Virginia Commonwealth University has spent his career studying the health effects of forgiveness. His research and that of others has shown that the act of forgiving can lead to lower blood pressure, a stronger immune system, and fewer symptoms of depression and anxiety. On the other hand, holding on to anger, what researchers call rumination, is a major stressor. It keeps the body in a constant state of fight or flight, flooding it with cortisol and adrenaline. Over time, this chronic stress contributes to a huge range of health problems, from heart disease to digestive issues. A study from Hope College in Michigan found that when people were asked to think about someone who had hurt them, their heart rate and blood pressure spiked. But when they were coached to think about that person with empathy and forgiveness, their stress responses calmed down. As we age, we accumulate a lifetime of hurts, slights, and betrayals. It's an unavoidable part of being human. If we carry all of them with us, the weight becomes unbearable. Forgiveness isn't about condoning what happened. It's not about letting the other person off the hook. It's about letting ourselves off the hook. It's about choosing to release the anger and resentment that is poisoning us from the inside. It's a gift we give to ourselves. The medieval peasant had to forgive to keep their village from falling apart. We have to forgive to keep ourselves from falling apart. If the health benefits of forgiveness are so clear, why isn't forgiveness therapy a standard part of geriatric medicine? What is the neurological difference between letting go of a grudge and simply suppressing it? And can a person truly forgive an act that the perpetrator has never acknowledged or apologized for? Number 20. Can a shared meal heal more than hunger? In a medieval hall, whether it was the lord's castle or a peasant's hut, the hearth was the center of the home, and the sharing of food was the center of social life. A meal wasn't just about refueling. It was a ritual. It was a time for storytelling, for hashing out disputes, for reinforcing social bonds. Breaking bread with someone was a profound act of community and trust. Festivals were marked by feasts. Contracts were sealed over a shared meal. Hospitality, the welcoming of a stranger with food and drink, was a sacred duty. That they understood that eating together does something more than just feed the body. It feeds the soul. We have largely lost this. We eat in our cars, at our desks, in front of the television. Even when we eat with family, we're often distracted by our phones. The shared meal as a daily ritual is dying. And this has serious consequences, especially for older adults who are at a high risk for social isolation. The simple act of eating with others can be a powerful antidote to loneliness. Sociologist and anthropologist Robin Dunbar at the University of Oxford has done extensive research on the importance of social bonding for human health. He argues that activities like eating together, laughing, and singing trigger the release of endorphins. These are the brain's natural opiates. They not only make us feel good, but they also play a crucial role in social bonding. Sharing a meal is a uniquely effective way to trigger this system. The act of eating requires a level of trust and intimacy. It's a shared rhythmic activity that builds connection. A 2017 study from Dunbar's team found that people who eat socially more often feel happier, are more satisfied with their lives, and have a wider social network to support them in times of need. For older adults, the benefits are even more pronounced. Communal dining has been shown to improve nutrition as people tend to eat more and make healthier choices when they eat with others. But the psychological benefits are the most important. It provides a regular, structured social event to look forward to. It combats the loneliness that can be so devastating to both mental and physical health. It provides a space for conversation and connection. Some innovative programs are now trying to bring this wisdom back. Share Your Food initiatives connect older adults with younger families for shared meals. Some retirement communities are redesigning their dining halls to feel more like lively, intergenerational restaurants. They are rediscovering what the medieval peasant knew all along: a shared table is a place of healing. What is it about the specific act of eating that makes it so much more powerful for bonding than other shared activities? If communal eating is so beneficial, could we design social prescriptions where doctors prescribe weekly shared meals for isolated seniors? In a world of food delivery apps and solo dining, are we engineering the shared meal out of existence? And what will be the long-term cost to our social fabric? Number 19, is there a deep connection between our hands and our minds? For a medieval person, their hands were their life. A blacksmith's hands were calloused and strong from the hammer and the forge. A weaver's hands were nimble and quick from the shuttle and the loom. A farmer's hands were rough and stained from the soil and the crops. Their hands were not just tools, they were the primary interface with the world. They thought with their hands. The knowledge of a craft was not just in their head, it was in their muscles, their palms, their fingertips. This deep, intimate connection between the hand and the brain was a given. It was the foundation of their entire world. We are losing this connection. Much of our work is now abstract, happening on screens and in our heads. We type, we swipe, we click, our hands are still moving, but in a very narrow, repetitive way. Many of us have lost the basic competence of making or fixing things. This disconnect between hand and brain might be having a more profound effect on our well-being than we realize. The philosopher Matthew Crawford wrote a brilliant book about this called Shop Class as Soulcraft. He argues that manual labor, the kind that requires skill and judgment, is deeply fulfilling. It engages the whole person, mind and body together. It grounds us in reality. You can't bluff your way through fixing an engine or building a bookshelf. Either it works or it doesn't. This provides a kind of satisfaction and sense of agency that is often missing from modern knowledge work. As we get older, this wisdom becomes even more important. Retirement can leave a void. The structured purpose of a job disappears. This is where keeping your hands busy can be a lifeline. Hobbies like gardening, knitting, woodworking, or painting are not just ways to pass the time. They are forms of therapy. Neurologically, engaging in a complex manual task is a powerful workout for the brain. It involves fine motor skills, spatial reasoning, problem solving, and concentration. A 2015 study from the Mayo Clinic found that seniors who engaged in craft activities like quilting and knitting had a 45% lower risk of developing mild cognitive impairment. It seems that the complex dance between the hands, the eyes, and the brain builds cognitive reserve, a kind of mental scaffolding that helps protect against decline. But it's more than just brain exercise. There's an emotional and spiritual component too. That creating something tangible with your own hands is a powerful affirmation of your ability to make a mark on the world. It's a source of pride and purpose. It connects you to a long tradition of human making. The medieval artisan knew this in their bones. Their identity was their work. A cooper was a cooper. A smith was a smith. Reclaiming a small piece of that, learning to use our hands again, can be a profound way to stay engaged, sharp, and sane as we age. What have we lost, neurologically, by shifting from a world of manual manipulation to a world of symbolic manipulation on screens? Could the rise in maker spaces and craft hobbies be a subconscious rebellion against this disembodied existence? If hands-on work is so good for the aging brain, why do we still see it as less prestigious than office work? Number 18. How do we handle life's inevitable ups and downs? One of the most enduring images from the Middle Ages is the Rota Fortunae, or the Wheel of Fortune. It's a concept that was popularized by the 6th century philosopher Boethius in his book, The Consolation of Philosophy, which he wrote while in prison awaiting execution. The image is simple and powerful, a giant wheel being turned by the blind goddess Fortuna. At the top of the wheel is a king in all his glory. As the wheel turns, he is cast down, and a beggar from the bottom rises to take his place. The message was clear. Life is unpredictable. Your fortune can change in an instant. Nothing is permanent. Health, wealth, power, it can all be taken away without warning. This might sound like a depressing philosophy, but for the medieval mind, it was a source of profound wisdom and resilience. It was a mental tool for dealing with the constant uncertainty of their world famine, plague, war. It taught them two things. First, when you are on top, be humble. Don't get arrogant because your position is temporary. The wheel will turn. Second, when you are at the bottom, don't despair. Your suffering is not permanent. The wheel will turn. This understanding fostered a kind of psychological flexibility. It helped people to not get too attached to good fortune and not be completely crushed by bad fortune. We live in a culture that denies the wheel of fortune. We believe we are in control. We believe that if we work hard, eat right, and think positive thoughts, we can guarantee a life of constant upward progress. We see any downturn to breath, a job loss, an illness, a failed relationship as a personal failure. This makes us incredibly brittle. When the inevitable downturns of life happen, especially as we get older and face illness and loss, we are psychologically unprepared. We are shocked and outraged. We feel that life has been unfair. The medieval person would have just shrugged and said, the wheel turns. This idea is mirrored in modern psychology, particularly in acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. ACT teaches that trying to control or eliminate negative thoughts and feelings is a losing battle. Instead, it encourages psychological flexibility, the ability to accept your circumstances, feel your feelings without being controlled by them, and commit to actions that align with your values. It's about learning to ride the waves of life instead of trying to stop the ocean. And a 2011 meta-analysis of ACT studies showed it to be effective for a wide range of issues, including chronic pain, depression, and anxiety, all common challenges in later life. It's a modern clinical framework for the ancient wisdom of the Wheel of Fortune. This understanding that life has ups and downs, that we are not in complete control, is not a sign of weakness. It's the foundation of true, lasting strength. If accepting a lack of control is key to resilience, why is our entire self-help industry built on the promise that you can control everything? Does the constant exposure to curated, perfect lives on social media make it even harder for us to accept the turning of our own wheel? What would a modern education system look like if it taught psychological flexibility alongside math and science? Number 17, do daily routines hold a deeper power? Think of a medieval monastery. The life of a monk was governed by the ringing of bells. It's a bell for waking, a bell for prayer, a bell for work, a bell for meals, a bell for sleep. Their days were structured by a strict, repeating pattern of rituals. This Rule of St. Benedict, written in the 6th century, was a blueprint for a balanced life of prayer, work, and study. This wasn't just about discipline, it was about creating a rhythm that freed the mind. By making the structure of the day automatic, the monks could focus their mental and spiritual energy on what truly mattered. The ritual wasn't the point, it was the vessel that held the point. We tend to resist routine. We crave novelty and spontaneity. We see routine as boring, a sign of a life stuck in a rut. But the medieval monks and many other ancient traditions understood that ritual and routine are not the enemies of a meaningful life. They are the architecture of it. A predictable structure creates a sense of safety and stability. It reduces cognitive load. You don't have to waste mental energy every day deciding what to do next. This is especially important as we get older. When other parts of life can feel chaotic and out of control, health problems, changes in family structure, the loss of friends, a stable daily routine can be a powerful anchor. The science of habit formation confirms this wisdom. Researchers like Charles Duhigg, author of The Power of Habit, explain that our brains are wired to turn routines into automatic behaviors. This is an energy-saving mechanism. When a routine is established, the prefrontal cortex, the decision-making part of the brain, can go quiet. This frees up mental resources for other things. For an older person, this can be crucial. A simple morning ritual, waking at the same time, doing some light stretches, making a cup of tea, reading a chapter of a book, you can set a positive and stable tone for the entire day. It creates a sense of normalcy and control in a world that can feel increasingly unpredictable. Furthermore, rituals have a powerful psychological effect. A 2013 study published in Psychological Science showed that performing rituals can reduce anxiety and improve performance, even if the rituals are completely arbitrary. The researchers found that the sense of order and predictability that a ritual provides helps people feel more in control of their environment, which in turn calms them down. The medieval monks' day was filled with these rituals, from the specific way they chanted to the order of their prayers. We can build our own small, secular rituals. The ritual of a weekly phone call with a child. The ritual of a Sunday morning walk. The ritual of tidying the kitchen before bed. These aren't just chores, they are small, repeated acts that give our lives shape, meaning, and a comforting rhythm as we navigate the uncertainties of age. If our brains crave routine to save energy, why does our culture glorify a life of constant, unstructured spontaneity? What is the difference between a life-giving ritual and a deadening rut? And how do we know when we've crossed the line? Could the simple act of reintroducing shared, predictable rituals like family dinners be a powerful public health intervention? Number 16. Who are you without your youthful appearance? Medieval art is not filled with beautiful people. Look at the paintings of Peter Bruegel the Elder or the sculptures on a cathedral. You see peasants with weathered faces, saints with looks of suffering, old men with sagging jowls and wrinkled brows. Their culture had a different relationship with physical appearance. In a world without photography, without mirrors in every home, your face was not your primary identity. Your identity was your family, your role in the community, your skills, your faith. Furthermore, the Christian concept of vanitas taught that earthly beauty was fleeting and unimportant. Your pride in one's appearance was a sin. The body was seen as a temporary vessel for the immortal soul. What mattered was the state of your soul, not the smoothness of your skin. This is a stark contrast to our modern world. We are obsessed with youth and beauty. The anti-aging industry is worth billions of dollars. We are bombarded with images of airbrushed perfection. We are taught from a young age that our value is tied to our physical attractiveness. This sets us up for a terrible crisis as we inevitably get older. When the wrinkles appear, when the hair turns gray, when the body sags, we can feel like we are losing ourselves. We are losing our value. It can be a source of profound anxiety and depression. The medieval wisdom of letting go of vanity offers a way out of this trap. It asks a powerful question: who are you when your looks are gone? If your entire sense of self is built on your appearance, the answer is nobody. But if your identity is built on your character, your relationships, your wisdom, your passions, then aging is not a loss of self. It is a revealing of the true self. It's a process of shedding the superficial and getting down to what is real and lasting. Psychologist Erik Erikson's stages of psychosocial development touch on this. The final stage, which typically occurs in late adulthood, is ego integrity versus despair. At this stage, people look back on their lives and either feel a sense of satisfaction and integrity or a sense of regret and despair. A key part of achieving integrity is accepting one's whole life, including the physical decline of the body. It's a shift in focus from the external to the internal. A 2014 study in the Journal of Women in Aging found that women who placed less importance on appearance and more on their internal life, their relationships, their personal growth, reported higher life satisfaction as they aged. They had successfully navigated this shift. The medieval concept of vanitas wasn't about self-loathing. It was a liberating idea. It frees you from the tyranny of the mirror. It allows you to focus on developing the parts of yourself that do not fade with time. If our obsession with youthful appearance is so psychologically damaging, why do we continue to promote it so aggressively in media and advertising? What would happen to our economy if a large portion of the population suddenly decided to let go of vanity and age naturally? Can we ever truly separate our sense of self-worth from our physical appearance? Or are we hardwired by evolution to value it? Number 15, what does it mean to die well? In the Middle Ages, people died at home. They were surrounded by their family, their friends, their community. Death was not hidden away in a sterile hospital ward. It was a public communal event. There was a whole genre of literature called ars moriendi, or the art of dying. These were manuals that gave guidance on how to have a good death. Like a good death was one in which you were spiritually prepared. You had confessed your sins, forgiven those who had wronged you, said your goodbyes. You faced death with courage and faith, accepting it as a natural transition. The goal was not to cling to life at all costs. The goal was to die well. This is perhaps the most profound and challenging piece of wisdom we can learn from them. Our modern medical system is built on the opposite principle. It is an ars vivendi, an art of living, or more accurately, an art of prolonging life. We have become incredibly good at it. We can keep a body functioning long after any meaningful quality of life is gone. We see death as a medical failure, not a natural part of life, and because we have medicalized death, we have also hidden it. Most people now die in institutions, hooked up to machines, often alone. We have lost the art of dying. Dr. Atul Gawande wrote a powerful book about this called Being Mortal Medicine and What Matters in the End. He argues that in our focus on survival, we have forgotten about the importance of well-being. We subject the elderly and terminally ill to painful, invasive treatments that may extend their life by a few weeks or months, but which destroy their quality of life in the process. We don't ask them what they truly want. What are their priorities? What are their fears? What does a good end of life look like to them? These are the questions that the Ars Moriendi tried to answer. The modern hospice and palliative care movements are, in a sense, a rediscovery of this medieval wisdom. Palliative care is not about giving up. It's about shifting the focus from cure to comfort. It's about managing pain, alleviating symptoms, and providing psychological and spiritual support to patients and their families. It's about helping people to live as well as possible for as long as possible. Well, studies have shown that patients who receive early palliative care not only report a higher quality of life, but in some cases they actually live longer than those who receive standard aggressive treatment. By preparing for a good death, we can actually have a better life, right up to the very end. This requires us to have conversations we are terrified of having. It requires us to face our own mortality. The medieval person was forced to do this by their circumstances. We have to choose to do it. If palliative care improves quality of life and can even extend it, why is it still seen as giving up and introduced so late in the course of an illness? How much of our aggressive end-of-life medical treatment is driven by the genuine hope of the patient versus the fear of lawsuits and the financial incentives of the medical system? What would a modern ars moriendi look like, and how could we teach it? Number 14. Have we traded wisdom for information? In a world before printing presses and the internet, knowledge was passed down orally. History, stories, skills, and wisdom were held in the minds of the elders. They were the community's living library. A person's value often increased with age because they had accumulated more experience, seen more harvests, survived more winters. They had a long-term perspective that the young lacked. They were the keepers of the culture. Respect for elders wasn't just a nice sentiment, it was a survival strategy. You listened to the old farmer because she knew which crops would grow in the rocky soil. You listened to the old midwife because she had delivered hundreds of babies. Their knowledge was practical and hard-won. We are drowning in information, but we are starving for wisdom. We can Google any fact in a matter of seconds, but information is not the same as wisdom. Information is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad. Wisdom is knowledge that has been filtered through experience, context, and a deep understanding of human nature. And it is something that, by its very nature, takes time to acquire. Our culture worships the new. We are obsessed with youth, innovation, and disruption. We often dismiss the elderly as being out of touch, irrelevant, their knowledge obsolete. In the tech industry, a programmer can be considered old at 35. We have created a world where the experience of a 60-year-old is often seen as less valuable than the technical skills of a 20-year-old. We have inverted the medieval hierarchy of knowledge. Psychologist Monica Ardelt at the University of Florida is a leading researcher on wisdom. She defines wisdom as having three key dimensions: cognitive, reflective, and compassionate. The cognitive dimension is the ability to understand life and see the deeper truth of a situation. The reflective dimension is the ability to look at things from multiple perspectives, to see beyond your own ego. The compassionate dimension is a deep empathy and concern for others. Her research has shown that wisdom is not guaranteed with age, but the potential for it increases. It is correlated with higher life satisfaction and a greater sense of well-being in later life. People who score high on wisdom scales are better at handling the challenges of aging. We need to create a culture that values this kind of wisdom again. We need to build bridges between generations. Programs that pair older mentors with young people have shown huge benefits for both groups. The elders feel a sense of purpose and value, and the young people get the benefit of their life experience. We need to stop seeing our elders as a burden and start seeing them as a precious, untapped resource. They are our living libraries, and we are letting the books rot on the shelves. If wisdom is a combination of cognitive, reflective, and compassionate abilities, can it be taught, or must it be earned through suffering and experience? In a world changing so rapidly, is the experiential knowledge of older generations truly still relevant? What would society look like if corporate boards and government bodies were required to have a certain percentage of members over the age of 70? And number 13, why do we treat our bodies like machines to be fixed? The medieval person had a very different relationship with their body. They saw it as an imperfect, temporary vessel. It was subject to illness, pain, and decay. This was simply the nature of earthly life. There was an acceptance of the body's frailties that is foreign to us. They didn't expect to feel perfect all the time. And aching back from a life of farm labor wasn't a problem to be solved with surgery and painkillers. It was just a part of being a farmer. They lived in their bodies in a way that was less about optimization and more about acceptance. We, on the other hand, view the body as a machine. It's a machine that we are supposed to maintain, upgrade, and keep running at peak performance. When a part starts to wear out, we expect to be able to fix or replace it. This mechanistic view of the body has given us incredible medical advances. We have joint replacements, organ transplants, and drugs that can manage chronic conditions. But it has also created a deep sense of anxiety and dissatisfaction. We are constantly monitoring our machine, tracking our steps, our sleep, our heart rate. We feel like we have failed if our body shows any sign of wear and tear. As we get older, this mechanistic view becomes a trap. A machine is only valuable when it works perfectly. When it starts to break down, its value decreases. If we see our aging bodies as failing machines, we will inevitably see ourselves as declining in value. We will be in a constant losing battle against the natural process of entropy. The medieval wisdom of accepting a worn body offers a more compassionate path. It's not about giving up or neglecting your health. It's about changing your relationship with your body. It's about seeing it less as a machine to be perfected and more as a living organism with its own history. The wrinkles, the scars, the stiff joints, they are not signs of failure. They are the physical record of a life lived. They are evidence of your journey. This perspective is echoed in disability studies, which advocate for a social model of disability. This model says that a person is not disabled by their physical impairment, but by a society that is not designed to accommodate them. It's a shift from fixing the person to fixing the environment and accepting a wider range of physical realities. Adopting this mindset can be incredibly freeing. It allows you to work with your body instead of against it. It encourages you to find new ways to move, new activities to enjoy that honor your body's current abilities. It fosters gratitude for what your body can still do rather than resentment for what it can't. A 2011 study on self-compassion found that people who have a kinder, more accepting attitude toward their own imperfections are more resilient and have better mental health. Treating our aging bodies with this kind of compassion, seeing them not as failing machines, but as faithful, lifelong companions, is a key to navigating the physical challenges of later life. Is our mechanistic view of the body a direct result of the Industrial Revolution, and are we only now seeing its psychological consequences? If we were to fully embrace a more accepting view of physical decline, would it stifle medical innovation? How can we cultivate gratitude for our worn bodies in a culture that relentlessly celebrates youthful, flawless physicality? Number 12, does knowing your role bring freedom, not restriction? In the highly structured, hierarchical society of the Middle Ages, everyone had a place. You were a peasant, a knight, a priest, a merchant. Your role was largely determined by your birth. From a modern perspective, this seems incredibly restrictive and unjust. We value freedom, individuality, and the ability to be whatever we want to be. But this medieval idea of knowing your place might hold a hidden piece of wisdom if we can look past the rigid class structure. The wisdom is not about being locked into a social class, it's about the psychological comfort and clarity that comes from understanding your role and your responsibilities within a community. In the medieval village, everyone had a job to do. The baker baked the bread, the blacksmith shod the horses, the priest cared for the souls. Everyone was needed, everyone contributed, your identity was clear, and your value to the community was obvious. There was a sense of interdependence. This provided a powerful sense of belonging and purpose. We live in a world of almost infinite choice. We are told we can be anything, do anything. This is liberating in many ways, but it can also be a source of immense anxiety. The sociologist Emil Durkheim called this anomie a feeling of normlessness, of not knowing where you fit in. When all the traditional social structures dissolve, we are left floating, responsible for creating our own identity and purpose from scratch. This can be an exhausting and lonely task. As we get older, this can become particularly acute. The well-defined role of parent may lessen as children become independent. The role of worker disappears with retirement. We can be left asking, who am I now? What is my purpose? Where do I fit in? The medieval model, stripped of its feudal injustice, suggests that finding a clear role within a community is a key to well-being. This doesn't have to be a job. It can be the role of mentor, volunteer, storyteller, caregiver, neighborhood watch captain. It's about finding a way to contribute your skills and experience to a group that needs them. It's about knowing that you have a place, that you are needed. Research on volunteering among seniors consistently shows its powerful benefits. A 2013 study from the Carnegie Mellon University found that older adults who volunteered for at least 200 hours a year were less likely to develop high blood pressure. Other studies have linked volunteering to lower rates of depression and increased longevity. Why? Because it provides a role. It provides a community. It provides a sense of purpose. It answers the question, what is my place? The medieval person had their place assigned to them. We have the freedom and the challenge to find our own. Have we overestimated the benefits of infinite choice and underestimated the human need for well-defined social roles? Could the modern identity crisis be a symptom of Durkheim's enemy, a direct result of losing our traditional places in society? If we were to create new respected social roles for elders, what would they be, and how would we integrate them into our communities? Number 11. What have we lost in our quest for instant gratification? Life in the Middle Ages was slow. It moved at the pace of a walking man or a trotting horse. It was governed by the seasons, not the clock. If you wanted bread, you had to grow the wheat, harvest it, grind it, and bake it. It was a process that took a year. If you wanted to build a cathedral, it could take generations. They lived in a world where patience wasn't just a virtue, it was a fundamental necessity. You had no choice but to wait. This forced them to develop a long-term perspective. They planted trees whose shade they would never enjoy. They laid the foundations of buildings they would never see completed. They were links in a chain that stretched from the past into the future. We have engineered patience out of our lives. We have one-click ordering, on-demand streaming, and instant global communication. We get frustrated if a website takes more than 3 seconds to load. Our entire economy is built on fulfilling our desires as quickly as possible. This has trained our brains to expect and demand instant gratification, and this is having a profound effect on our ability to age well. The famous marshmallow test, conducted by psychologist Walter Mischel at Stanford in the 1960s and 70s, showed the power of delayed gratification. For children who could resist the temptation to eat one marshmallow in order to get two later on were found in follow-up studies to have better life outcomes. They had higher test scores, better health, and were more successful in their careers. The ability to delay gratification is a cornerstone of emotional maturity and long-term success. As we get older, patience becomes an essential skill. Our bodies heal more slowly. The chronic conditions of age require long-term management, not quick fixes. Building deep relationships with grandchildren takes time. Learning a new skill in retirement doesn't happen overnight. The things that bring the most meaning in later life, legacy, relationships, wisdom, are all slow-growing plants. If we have spent our whole lives in a state of impatient demand, we will be ill-equipped for the patient work of a good old age. We will be frustrated, anxious, and constantly disappointed. Cultivating patience is like building a muscle. It requires practice. The medieval person practiced it every day, whether they wanted to or not. We have to choose to practice it. We can do this in small ways. Plant a garden. Learn a musical instrument. Read a long, difficult book. Choose the regular shipping option instead of overnight. These are small acts of resistance against the culture of immediacy. They retrain our brains to appreciate the process, not just the outcome. They teach us the quiet joy of waiting, of watching something unfold in its own time. This is a skill that will pay huge dividends as we navigate the slow, patient journey of growing old. Is our technology-driven impatience rewiring our brains in a fundamental way, and are we the last generation to remember what it was like to wait? If delayed gratification is so critical, why do we market almost exclusively to the part of the brain that wants things now? Can a person who has lived their entire life on a diet of instant gratification learn the deep patience required for a graceful old age? Number 10. Have we forgotten how to enjoy the simple things? The life of a medieval peasant was one of hardship, but it was not without its joys. And these joys were, by necessity, simple: the taste of the first ripe apple from the tree, the warmth of the fire on a cold night, the sound of a fiddle at a village wedding, a day of rest after a week of hard labor. Because their lives were not filled with constant entertainment and manufactured pleasure, they had a greater capacity to appreciate these small, simple moments of grace. Their senses were not dulled by overstimulation. The contrast between hardship and pleasure made the pleasure all the sweeter. We live in a world of hyperstimulation. We have an infinite buffet of entertainment, food, and experiences available to us at all times. But there's a paradox here. The more pleasure we have access to, the less we seem to enjoy it. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill. We get used to a certain level of pleasure, and then we need more and more to feel the same level of satisfaction. A simple meal doesn't taste as good after a week of feasting. A quiet evening at home feels boring after a week of blockbuster movies. Our capacity for simple pleasure has atrophied. As we get older, our world often simplifies. We may not have the energy or the money for constant travel and excitement. Our lives become quieter, more circumscribed. If we have spent our lives on the hedonic treadmill, this simplification can feel like a terrible deprivation. It can lead to boredom and depression, but if we can cultivate the medieval skill of appreciating simple pleasures, this later stage of life can be one of great contentment. This is the core idea behind the practice of mindfulness, which has its roots in ancient Buddhist traditions, but is now a major field of psychological research. Mindfulness is the practice of paying attention to the present moment on purpose without judgment. It's about noticing the taste of your coffee, the feeling of the sun on your skin, the sound of the birds outside your window. It's a way of getting off the hedonic treadmill and resensitizing yourself to the small joys of everyday life. A 2011 study from the University of Wisconsin showed that mindfulness practice can lead to lasting changes in the brain, increasing activity in areas associated with positive emotion and decreasing activity in areas associated with anxiety. For older adults, the benefits can be profound. A study published in 2014 found that a mindfulness program for seniors reduced feelings of loneliness and even decreased the expression of inflammatory genes. By learning to find joy in the simple present moment, they were able to improve both their mental and physical health. The medieval peasant didn't have a name for it, but they practiced a form of mindfulness out of necessity. They were fully present in their world because they had to be. We have to learn how to do it. But rediscovering the joy of a simple meal, a quiet walk, or a good conversation is a key to finding contentment in the second half of life. Has our constant search for peak experiences robbed us of the ability to find joy in ordinary life? What is the neurological mechanism that allows mindfulness to blunt the effect of the hedonic treadmill? If simple pleasures are so powerful, why do we build our lives and our economy around the pursuit of complex, expensive ones? Number 9, what will they say about you when you're gone? In the small, interconnected world of a medieval village, your reputation was everything. It was your social currency. There were no credit scores or background checks. People did business with you, married their children to your children, and helped you in times of trouble based on your character. Were you honest? Were you hardworking? Did you keep your word? Your legacy was not primarily about the wealth or property you left behind. It was about the name you left behind. A good name was a precious inheritance passed down through generations. A bad name was a stain that was hard to wash away. This meant that people were acutely aware of how their actions were perceived. They were living for a legacy of character. We live in a more anonymous and transient world. We can move to a new city and reinvent ourselves. Our actions online can be disconnected from our real-world identity. The idea of legacy can feel distant and abstract. For many, legacy has become synonymous with wealth, on the financial inheritance you leave to your children. But the medieval focus on a legacy of character holds a deeper truth. At the end of our lives, what truly matters is not the size of our bank account, but the impact we have had on the people around us. The psychologist Erik Erikson called this concept generativity. It's the stage of life, typically in middle adulthood, where we feel a need to nurture and guide the next generation to create something that will outlast us. This isn't just about having children. It can be about mentoring, teaching, creating art, building a business, or contributing to your community. It's about shifting your focus from what can I get to what can I give. Erikson believed that successfully navigating this stage leads to a sense of fulfillment, while failing to do so leads to a feeling of stagnation and self-absorption. As we move into later life, this question of legacy becomes even more central. The awareness of our own mortality sharpens the question, what will I leave behind? What will my life have meant? A 2010 study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people who were focused on generative goals, LG goals, related to helping others and contributing to the future, interest in reported higher levels of well-being than those focused on hedonistic goals. Thinking about your legacy in a deep and meaningful way is not a morbid exercise. It's a clarifying one. It helps you to align your daily actions with your deepest values. And it forces you to ask, am I living a life that I will be proud to look back on? The medieval person was constantly reminded of their legacy by the tight-knit community that was always watching. Like we have to be our own audience. We have to hold ourselves accountable to the kind of person we want to be. Thinking about your eulogy is a powerful thought experiment. What do you want people to say about you when you are gone? That you were rich, or that you were kind, that you were wise, that you made a difference in their lives? The answer to that question is the key to building a life of meaning and a legacy that truly matters. In an increasingly individualistic and secular society, has the concept of legacy lost its power? What is the psychological difference between a legacy of wealth and a legacy of character, both for the person leaving it and the person receiving it? If we could somehow know for certain what people would say at our funeral, how many of us would change the way we are living today? Number 8, are we losing the ability to be alone? The medieval world was noisy and crowded, but it also offered profound opportunities for solitude. A shepherd alone in the hills with his flock, a monk in his silent cell, a mystic seeking a direct experience of God in the wilderness. Solitude was not seen as a negative state. It wasn't the same as loneliness. Loneliness is the pain of being alone. Solitude is the joy of being alone. It was understood as a necessary condition for deep thought, for spiritual reflection, for communion with God. It was a time to recharge, to find your center, to hear the still, small voice that is drowned out by the noise of the world. We have almost completely lost the art of solitude. We are terrified of being alone with our own thoughts. The moment we are by ourselves in a line at the grocery store or waiting for a bus, we pull out our phones. We fill every empty space with podcasts, music, social media, and news. We are constantly connected, but we are rarely in true contact with ourselves. This has created a paradoxical situation. We are more connected than ever, yet rates of loneliness are soaring. We have confused connection with communion. We have forgotten that in order to truly connect with others, we must first be able to connect with ourselves. And that requires solitude. The writer and hermit Thomas Merton, who lived as a Trappist monk in the 20th century, wrote extensively about the importance of solitude. He said, "We cannot see things in perspective until we cease to hug them to our own bosom." Solitude provides that perspective. It allows us to step back from the constant demands of our lives and see the bigger picture. It allows our own thoughts and feelings to surface instead of being constantly drowned out by external stimuli. Neuroscience is beginning to understand what happens in the brain during solitude. When we are not focused on an external task, the brain's default mode network, DMN, becomes active. This network is involved in self-reflection, long-term planning, and integrating our experiences into a coherent sense of self. It's the part of the brain that creates our life story. If we never give the DMN the quiet time it needs to function, we risk living a fragmented, unexamined life. A 2014 study in the journal Science gave participants a simple choice: sit alone in a room with their thoughts for 15 minutes or receive a mild electric shock. A shocking number of people, 67% of men and 25% of women, chose the electric shock. This is how deeply we fear being alone with ourselves. As we get older, solitude can be a powerful tool. It's a time to process a lifetime of experiences, to make sense of our journey. It's a time to come to terms with who we are, but we have to learn how to do it. It means intentionally putting away the distractions. It means going for a walk without headphones. It means sitting in a chair and just being. At first, it can be uncomfortable. All the anxious thoughts we've been pushing away will come to the surface, but if we can sit with that discomfort, on the other side is a sense of peace, clarity, and self-knowledge that is impossible to find in the noise of the world. What is the optimal dose of solitude, and can you have too much of a good thing? Is our addiction to digital distraction a cause of our fear of solitude, or a symptom of it? If the default mode network is crucial for creating a sense of self, what happens to the identity of a person who is never alone with their thoughts? Number 7, is avoiding pain making us weaker? Life in the Middle Ages was filled with pain. Physical pain from disease, injury, and hard labor was a constant companion. There was no effective anesthesia, no antibiotics, no modern painkillers. Emotional pain from the loss of loved ones, especially children, was a near universal experience. They did not have our modern expectation that life should be comfortable and pain-free. They accepted suffering as an inevitable and even meaningful part of the human condition. A Christian theology gave it a powerful frame. Suffering could be redemptive. It was a way to share in the suffering of Christ, to purify the soul. The Stoic acceptance of hardship was built into the very fabric of their worldview. Our modern world is built on the promise of avoiding pain. We have a pill for every ache, a distraction for every sorrow, an app for every inconvenience. We have come to see pain by both physical and emotional as an anomaly, a sign that something is wrong and needs to be fixed immediately. This relentless pursuit of comfort has had unintended consequences. In our effort to eliminate all pain, we may have also eliminated our ability to cope with it. We have become psychologically fragile. The concept of anti-fragility, developed by the writer Nassim Nicholas Taleb, is useful here. Some things are fragile, they break under stress. Some things are resilient, they endure stress. But some things are anti-fragile, they get stronger from stress. Our immune system is anti-fragile, it gets stronger when exposed to pathogens. Our muscles are anti-fragile, they grow when stressed by exercise. Taleb argues that our psychological and social systems should also be anti-fragile. By protecting our children from every risk and shielding ourselves from every discomfort, we are creating a generation of fragile individuals who shatter at the first sign of adversity. As we get older, we will inevitably face pain, the body weakens, we lose loved ones. We confront our own mortality. If we have spent our lives avoiding pain, we will be utterly unprepared for these challenges. We will lack the psychological muscles needed to endure them. The medieval acceptance of pain was not about masochism. It was about resilience. It was about understanding that pain is a teacher. It teaches us compassion. It teaches us what is truly important. It teaches us our own strength. Modern therapies like acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, are rediscovering this wisdom. The ACT does not try to eliminate painful thoughts or feelings. Instead, it teaches people to accept them as part of the human experience, to make room for them, and to continue to live a life guided by their values, even in the presence of pain. It's a clinical approach to the ancient art of endurance. Facing hardship, not avoiding it, is what builds character. The medieval person knew this because their life was a constant masterclass in it. We have to learn it by choosing to face our own discomforts, small and large, with courage and acceptance. In our quest to eliminate pain, have we accidentally pathologized the entire range of normal human suffering? What is the difference between redemptive suffering that builds character and pointless suffering that breaks the spirit? If a pain-free pill were invented that could eliminate all emotional and physical pain, would taking it be a moral act? Number 6. What happens when our stories are forgotten? Before widespread literacy, storytelling was the primary way that culture, history, and wisdom were transmitted. On long winter nights, families would gather around the fire and listen to the elders tell the old stories of tales of saints, of heroes, of local legends, of their own ancestors. These stories were not just entertainment, they were the glue that held the community together. They gave people a sense of shared identity, a connection to the past, and a moral compass for the future. Your personal story was part of a much larger story, the story of your family, your village, your faith. As we get older, we become the keepers of the stories. We are the living link to a past that is fading from memory. The stories of our childhoods, of our parents and grandparents, of the world as it used to be, and we hold them in trust for the next generation. The act of telling these stories is a powerful and important part of aging. It is a way of making sense of our own lives, of finding the themes and patterns in the chaos of our experience. This is the core idea behind narrative identity, a concept developed by psychologist Dan P. McAdams. He argues that we all form a sense of self by constructing a life story. This story integrates our past, present, and imagined future into a coherent whole. Telling our story is not just a personal exercise, it's a gift to the young. It gives them a sense of where they come from. It connects them to a lineage. In a world that can feel rootless and disconnected, these stories provide an anchor. They teach lessons, they impart values, and they create a bond between generations that is deeper than a shared interest in a TV show. The tradition of the ethical will, a document where a person passes down not their possessions but their values and life lessons, is a formal version of this ancient practice. We are at risk of losing this. We have replaced the oral tradition with the endless, fragmented stream of digital media. And families sit in the same room, each staring at their own screen in their own world. We have fewer and fewer opportunities for the kind of slow intergenerational conversation where stories are told. We need to consciously create these spaces. We need to ask our elders questions. What was it like when you were a child? Tell me a story about my grandmother. What is the most important lesson you learned in your life? The benefits of this are enormous. For the elder, it is a way to affirm their life's meaning, to feel valued and connected. Research on reminiscence therapy has shown that it can reduce depression and improve cognitive function in older adults. For the young, it is a priceless education in history, in humanity, in their own identity. The medieval family around the fire understood this instinctively. We have to relearn it. The stories we carry are one of the most precious things we have to pass on. If we don't tell them, they will die with us. In a digital age where every moment is recorded, have we lost the art of crafting a coherent life story from our memories? What is the difference between healthy reminiscence and being stuck in the past? If we could upload our memories to a database for future generations, would that be a worthy substitute for the intimate human act of telling a story? Question number 5. Does tending to something small teach us about everything? Many medieval families, even those in towns, had a small patch of land, a garden. Here they would grow herbs for medicine and cooking, vegetables to supplement their diet, and maybe a few flowers. The monastery gardens were famous, meticulously planned and cared for. This garden was not a hobby in the modern sense. It was a vital source of sustenance and a practical part of daily life. But in the simple, repetitive act of tending this small piece of earth, they were learning some of the deepest lessons about life. A garden teaches you about cycles. It teaches you about life, death, and renewal. You see the seeds sprout, the plants grow, the fruit ripen, and then the plants wither and die, their seeds returning to the earth to start the cycle again. This is a powerful, tangible metaphor for the human lifespan. It helps to normalize the process of aging and dying. It's not a linear decline, it's part of a beautiful, endless circle. A garden teaches you patience and acceptance. You cannot force a seed to sprout. You cannot make the rain fall. You learn to work with the rhythms of nature, not against them. You'll learn that you are not in complete control. You do your part, you prepare the soil, you plant the seeds, you pull the weeds, and then you have to let go and trust the process. This is a profound lesson for aging, a time when we must increasingly accept things that are beyond our control. A garden connects you to something larger than yourself. It gets your hands in the soil. It connects you to the seasons, to the weather, to the fundamental processes of life. In an increasingly virtual world, this physical, grounding connection is more important than ever. The psychiatrist Sue Stuart-Smith, in her book, The Well-Gardened Mind, explores the powerful therapeutic benefits of gardening. She details studies showing that gardening can reduce stress, alleviate depression, and improve concentration. The physical activity is good for the body, but the connection to nature seems to be what is so healing for the mind. A 2011 study in the Netherlands found that after a stressful task, people who gardened for 30 minutes experience a greater drop in the stress hormone cortisol than people who read a book for 30 minutes. As we get older, a garden can be a source of purpose, gentle exercise, and beauty. It gives you something to care for, something that depends on you. Watching things grow is an inherently hopeful act. It is a vote of confidence in the future. The scale can be adjusted to any ability, from a large vegetable patch to a few pots on a windowsill. The principle is the same. The medieval monk in his cloister garden and the modern retiree with her balcony tomatoes are both participating in the same ancient wisdom. By tending to something small and living, we learn how to tend to our own lives. What is it about the specific act of interacting with soil and plants that is so psychologically restorative? Could horticultural therapy be as effective as pharmaceuticals for some forms of anxiety and depression in the elderly? In our rush to urbanize, are we creating a generation that has no connection to where their food comes from? And what is the spiritual cost of that disconnect? Number 4, what if life isn't a climb, but a cycle? Our modern metaphor for life is a ladder or a mountain. We are supposed to climb. We start at the bottom, and we spend our lives striving to get to the topic. More success, more money, more status. In this metaphor, old age is a problem. It's the point where you can no longer climb. You reach a peak, and then it's all downhill. This view makes the second half of life seem like a long, sad decline, a descent into irrelevance. The medieval worldview was based on a different metaphor, the wheel or the cycle. They saw life not as a linear progression, but as a cyclical one. This was rooted in their daily experience. They saw the cycle of the day, sunrise, noon, sunset, night. They saw the cycle of the year, spring, summer, autumn, winter. Each part of the cycle had its own purpose, its own beauty, its own tasks. Spring was for planting, summer for growing, autumn for harvesting, winter for resting. You didn't curse the winter, you understood it as a necessary part of the cycle that made the spring possible. They applied this same thinking to the human lifespan, often through the concept of the three ages of man: youth, middle age, and old age. Each age had its role. Youth was for learning and growing. Middle age was for building and working. Old age was for wisdom, reflection, and preparing for the next life. One was not better than the other. They were all essential parts of a whole. Old age was not a failure to keep climbing. It was the harvest time of life. It was the winter, a time for rest, for sharing the stores of wisdom gathered over a lifetime. This cyclical view is much healthier and more realistic than our climbing metaphor. It reframes aging completely. It's not a decline, it's a new season. It has its own distinct purpose and its own unique gifts. The gerontologist Lars Tornstam developed a theory called gerotranscendence, which captures this idea. He found that as people get very old, many of them undergo a natural shift in perspective. They become less interested in material possessions and superficial social connections, and more interested in reflection, their inner life, and their connection to the cosmos. They move from a state of doing to a state of being. This is not dementia or depression. It's a new final stage of human development. It is the winter of the soul. Adopting this cyclical view can radically change our experience of getting older. It frees us from the frantic need to stay young, to keep climbing a mountain that has no peak. It allows us to embrace the changing seasons of our own lives. It helps us to ask not, how can I stay relevant, but what is the work of this season? What is it time to harvest? What is it time to let go of? It replaces the anxiety of decline with the peace of acceptance. The medieval peasant watching the fields lie fallow in winter understood this deep truth. Life is not a race to the top. It is a dance with the seasons. If our climb metaphor for life is so psychologically damaging in the long run, why is it the dominant story our culture tells? What would our society look like if we celebrated the winter of life as much as we celebrate the spring? Could the modern obsession with productivity and hustle culture be a symptom of our deep-seated fear of the inevitable, restful winter? Number 3, can a village still save us? In the Middle Ages, you didn't have a social network in the modern sense. You had a village, you were born into a web of relationships and obligations that was inescapable and all-encompassing. You knew your neighbors, your baker, your priest. You relied on them for help with the harvest, for comfort in times of grief, for protection from outsiders. This community was not always harmonious. It was filled with gossip, feuds, and petty jealousies. But it provided a powerful buffer against the hardships of life. You were never truly alone. The community was a given. It was the water you swam in. We have traded this dense local community for a world of loose global networks. We may have hundreds of friends on social media, but we may not know the name of the person living next door. The sociologist Robert Putnam chronicled this shift in his book, Bowling Alone. He showed, with decades of data, the steady decline of participation in all forms of community life, from civic clubs to church groups to family dinners. We have become a society of disconnected individuals, and it is killing us. A wave of recent research has shown that social isolation and loneliness are as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. A landmark 2015 study published in Perspectives on Psychological Science, which analyzed data from over 3.4 million people, found that social isolation significantly increases the risk of premature death. It's linked to a higher risk of heart disease, stroke, dementia, and depression. It seems that our need for deep, real-world social connection is not a preference, it's a biological imperative. This is especially critical as we get older. Retirement, the death of a spouse, and declining mobility can all shrink a person's social world, putting them at high risk for isolation. The medieval village, for all its flaws, provided a built-in safety net. We have to consciously build our own. This is the wisdom we need to reclaim the importance of a village. This doesn't have to be a literal village. It can be a close-knit group of friends, a vibrant church or community center, a multi-generational family living close by. The key is regular face-to-face interaction with people who know you and care about you. The Blue Zones research, led by Dan Buettner, identified the places in the world where people live the longest, healthiest lives. One of the common denominators in all these places, from Okinawa to Sardinia, was a strong emphasis on community. People were part of supportive social circles that encouraged healthy behaviors and provided a sense of belonging throughout their lives. They had a village. We need to stop thinking of community as a nice to have and start thinking of it as essential infrastructure for a healthy life, as important as good nutrition and medical care. The medieval peasant didn't have a choice. We do. And we are choosing a path of isolation that is leading to a public health crisis. We know loneliness is a killer, but what is the minimum effective dose of real human connection needed to stay healthy? In a world of digital communication, what is the unique biological and psychological impact of face-to-face interaction? Could we redesign our cities and suburbs to foster casual daily social contact, and would that be enough to rebuild our lost villages? Number 2 is mastery of a skill, the key to a good life. In the medieval world, many people's lives were defined by a craft. You were a stonemason, a weaver, a carpenter, a blacksmith. You started as an apprentice, learning the trade from a master. It was a long, slow process that could take years. You learned not just the techniques, but the ethos of the craft, a respect for the materials, a commitment to quality, a pride in your work. Your identity was tied to your skill. To be a master of your craft was a source of deep satisfaction and social respect. It gave your life a clear purpose and a tangible way to contribute to your community. We live in an age of generalization. The nature of work has changed. Many of us have jobs that are abstract and disconnected from the physical world. We shuffle emails, attend meetings, and manipulate data on a screen. The idea of dedicating a lifetime to the slow mastery of a single, tangible skill can seem old-fashioned, even inefficient. The gig economy encourages us to be flexible, to have a portfolio of skills, to constantly be retraining for the next new thing. But we may have lost something profound in this shift. The psychologist Csikszentmihalyi studied what he called flow, a state of complete absorption in an activity. It's that feeling of being in the zone, where time seems to disappear, your sense of self fades, and you are fully engaged in the task at hand. Csikszentmihalyi found that people are happiest not when they are relaxing, but when they are in a state of flow. And the activities most likely to produce flow are those that have clear goals, provide immediate feedback, and perfectly balanced challenge and skill. The work of a master craftsman is a perfect example of a flow-producing activity. As we get older, and especially after retirement, the pursuit of mastery can be a powerful engine for a meaningful life. It provides a structure for your days, and a reason to get out of bed in the morning. Learning a new, complex skill is also one of the best things you can do for your brain. A 2013 study published in Psychological Science found that older adults who learned a challenging new skill, like digital photography or quilting, showed greater improvements in memory compared to those who only did familiar, less demanding activities. The effort involved in mastering something new builds cognitive reserve, helping to keep the brain sharp and resilient. The specific skill doesn't matter. It could be learning to play the piano, becoming an expert gardener, mastering a new language, or taking up woodworking. The point is the process, the dedication, the practice, the slow, incremental progress, the deep satisfaction of creating something of quality. In a world that often feels chaotic and meaningless, reclaiming this ideal, choosing a craft, and dedicating ourselves to it can be a powerful path to a rich and satisfying old age. In a world that values speed and efficiency, is there still a place for the slow, inefficient process of true mastery? What is happening in the brain during a flow state, and can we learn to trigger it more reliably? If the pursuit of mastery is so fulfilling, why do so many of us spend our leisure time in passive consumption instead of active creation? Number 1, why should we think about death to live better? Of all the wisdom from the Middle Ages, this is perhaps the most stark and the most important. They lived with a constant awareness of death. The Black Death, which killed up to half the population of Europe in the mid-14th century, was the most dramatic example, but death was always close. It was a reality they could not ignore. And so, they developed a philosophy to deal with it. Memento mori. Remember, you will die. This was not a morbid obsession, it was a spiritual practice. Skulls and skeletons were common motifs in their art and on their tombs. They were not trying to be frightening, they were trying to be honest. The constant reminder of death was meant to do one thing to make you live a better life right now. If you know your time is short, you don't waste it on trivial things. You focus on what is truly important. You forgive more easily, you love more deeply, you take your spiritual life more seriously. The awareness of death is a powerful lens that brings a meaningful life into sharp focus. The Stoic philosophers of ancient Rome, like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, had the same idea. Seneca wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day. The one who puts the finishing touches on their life each day is never short of time." Our modern culture does the exact opposite. We deny death, we hide it, we use euphemisms for it. We fight it with every medical technology at our disposal. We are obsessed with staying young forever. By trying to deny the reality of death, we have ironically impoverished our lives. We live as if we have all the time in the world, so we postpone the important conversations. We hold on to petty grudges. We chase after things that don't really matter. We live in a state of distracted denial, but facing mortality can have powerful, positive psychological effects. Terror management theory, a field of social psychology, suggests that much of human behavior is driven by a subconscious fear of death. But when people are consciously and reflectively confronted with their own mortality, something interesting happens. Studies have shown that it can lead to increased pro-social behavior, a greater appreciation for life, and a clarification of one's values. It can make people more loving, more generous, and less concerned with superficial things like wealth and status. Palliative care workers see this every day. People who know they are dying often experience a profound sense of clarity and peace. They focus on their relationships, they find joy in small moments, they let go of old resentments, they live more fully in their final months than many of us do in our entire lives. The wisdom of memento mori is about trying to achieve that clarity without waiting for a terminal diagnosis. It's about living with the end in mind. As we get older, this practice becomes more urgent and more natural. The future shrinks and the present moment expands in importance. This is not a reason for despair. It is a call to action. Remember, you will die, and let that memory be the fuel that helps you to truly live. If the conscious contemplation of death can lead to a better life, why is it a subject we so assiduously avoid in our families and our culture? What is the neurological difference between a debilitating fear of death and a motivating awareness of it? If we were to reintroduce memento mori as a cultural practice, what would it look like in the 21st century?